and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with another tutorial. I haven't made a bag in a while and I had the urge to create a bag for you. So a lot of you ask me so many times what is my creative process. I have to say that a lot of time I find a yarn, I fall in love with the yarn, I bring it back home, and then all of a sudden I feel like I need to do a specific object, a specific garment with this yarn. It just comes to me. So this is one of my favorite Red Heart Unforgettable yarn. I have used this yarn so many times in so many different projects and I cannot get enough of it. It is a beautiful yarn, super easy to work with, knitting or crocheting. It comes in an amazing range of color. This one that I use today for this specific bag is in the color Whimsical. I am so in love with it. It has so many beautiful colors that are so interesting, and the mix of them together is just, to me, perfection. So Red Heart, again, you did it, and it's affordable too. So I saw this yarn, I knew it needed to come home with me, and then I had kind of an urge to create a bag with it. And so this bag I created for you today is in between, I would say, a basket bag and a backpack. It's beautiful. I will put all the material necessary to create it in the info box, and below you need a little bottom that is in faux leather. I bought it on Amazon, so we'll put the link down below for you to find it. You will need a handle. I love to buy my handles on Etsy, and I think this specific one, again, which is real leather, I bought on Etsy. And yeah, so you need some beautiful yarn, which I have here. You need a handle, you need a bottom, and then that's it. If you are not subscribed to my channel, what are you waiting for? Don't hesitate to do so. It's totally free. Click on the subscribe button right here. Don't hesitate to click on the little bell so you know every time I post something new. You do not miss any of my videos. Here are my social media. Come and join me as well. I have a lot of giveaways coming in on Instagram in December for the holidays, so just saying. So for today we are going to also learn how to create the braided stitch. So the braided stitch is super easy. Do not worry, I will take you through it as usual, slowly but surely. It is a puff stitch but with a little bit of a twist, and it's super easy. I think the only tricky part of this bag is probably the first row, the first and the second row, maybe attaching your stitches to the faux leather bottom of your bag. After that it is a breeze. It is so much fun. I love this yarn so much. You never know what color comes next. It's not boring. A beauty. And I cannot wait to wear this bag. Of course, you can line your bag if you know how to sew. I'm going to have to give it to my mother-in-law whenever I see her. I see her less often now, so anyway. But you could also put a little linen bag inside, you know, those drawstring linen bag. You could put, and I think that's what I'm going to do in the meantime, because if not, little bits and bobs can kind of go through the holes of your crochet. So either line it if you know how to. There's plenty of tutorials about how to line bags on YouTube. I'll try to find one and link it down below. That's about it. If you are interested in knowing how to create this beautiful crochet bag, keep on watching. In the meantime, stay healthy, stay safe, and happy crochet. Bye! For this tutorial, you will need 4 skeins of the beautiful Red Heart Unforgettable. I chose the color Whimsical. You will need a 4mm crochet hook, a 4.5mm crochet hook, and a 5mm crochet hook. And you will also need some scissors, a tapestry needle. You will also need a bottom, faux leather bottom for your bag. I will post the link in the info box down below to where you can purchase it. Alright, so here I passed my 4mm crochet hook through one of the holes of the bottom faux leather little oval right there. And you know what, if I had to do it again, I would probably begin in one of the corner, because that's going to be where you go back and forth and it's a little more uneven. So being in the middle of the back is not such a good idea. So go a few holes to the left or to the right next to where the little peg is, right there, and big. So first you're going to make a slip knot. Pass your crochet hook through one of the holes and then through the slip knot you just made. and then with your crochet hook you're grabbing the slip knot and pulling it through the hole of your bottom. Once your slip knot is passed through the hole, you're going to chain 1. Okay, now your yarn is attached to your bottom. In that same hole, you're going to pass your crochet hook through the hole, yarn over and back. So you're grabbing your yarn with the hook and pulling it back through that same hole again. We want to do 2 single crochet in each of the holes. So you're going to go from hole to hole and repeating exactly what we've made so far. So putting your crochet hook through that hole, yarn over, back through the hole. The first and the second rounds really are the trickiest, and then after that it's a breeze. So bear with me because it's really worth it. The result is gorgeous. Okay, so you have 2 stitches in your first hole, 2 single crochets. Go to the next hole, and in that next hole, here I can put the end yarn on the side, we don't need this anymore. You're going to repeat what we have done so far. So pass your crochet hook through the next hole, yarn over and back. When you do that, you will have 2 loops on your crochet hook, and then you yarn over and through both of the loops on your hook. That's 1 single crochet made. You're going to make another one in that same hole. Pass your crochet hook again through that hole. Yarn over and back through the hole. You will have 2 loops on your crochet hook. And yarn over through both of the loops. And that is what you're going to continue to do all around the bottom of your bag. And I will meet you once you go all around, 2 single crochets in each hole, and you reach the first one you created. So you are going to continue all around, making 2 single crochets around each and every hole, and I will meet you once you reach the first one you have made. So I know this round is tricky, but try when you make your stitches not to do it too tight, because you're going to have to pick those stitches in the next round, and the tighter you make it, the harder it's going to be in round 2. So don't pay attention to the fact that I began here my first stitch in the middle of the bottom. You do it as I showed you, right next to the peg on the side, because then your seam will be on the side and not in the back middle of your backpack, if that makes any sense. And this is what your work will look like. The color is already changing. That is so cool. We're going to make sure that we have 2 single crochets in the first hole there, and then we're going to slip stitch right on top of the first single crochet we had made. Here we go. Now we're going to change to a bigger crochet. So switching from a 4mm crochet hook now to your 4.5mm crochet hook. And for this first round, what I would like you to do is make a single crochet in each stitch. So there's going to be 2 stitches per hole. And you're going to make a single crochet in each and every one of them. Once you are done with your round of single crochet all around, slip stitch with the first one, and now switch to the 5mm crochet hook. And we are going to begin our pattern. The first pattern round will be different than the rest. I wanted to quickly show you how to make a puff stitch, and I wanted to show it to you with a thicker yarn and a thicker crochet hook, so it's easier for you to understand. So what you're going to do, imagine the circle is the bottom of your bag, the leather bottom. Those stitches are attached to it, to single crochet. So you chain 3, and then you're going to skip 2 single crochet and make a double crochet in the third one. And then you're going to chain 1, and you're going to come back to the first of the 2 stitches you had skipped. And inside that stitch, you're going to make your puff stitch. Let me show you slowly how to make a puff stitch. So you're going to yarn over, and you're going to go to that stitch we had skipped, the first one, pass your crochet hook through the stitch. Then you're going to yarn over and right back through the stitch, and you're going to pull a little. You have 3 little loops on your crochet hook. Then you're going to continue your puff stitch by yarning over and again passing through the same stitch you had skipped. Yarn over, give it some slack and pull. Right now you have 5 loops on your crochet hook. You're going to do that 5 more times. Yarn over, through the stitch and back, 9 loops. Yarn over, through the stitch and back, 11 loops. Yarn over, through the stitch and back, give it some slack, 13 loops. Yarn over one more time, and you have 15 loops in total. Now you're going to yarn over and pass it through all the stitches on your hook and chain 1, and you just made a puff stitch. Then you're going to count 2 stitches. You see the one that your stitch is attached to. You're going to count 2 stitches, 1, 2, and in the third you're going to make a double crochet, chain 1. So you're skipping 2 stitches, making a double crochet and making a chain 1. Go back to the stitch you had skipped, the first one of the 2 you have skipped, and in that first stitch you're going to again make a puff stitch. Exactly the same way I showed you. So yarn over, going through that first skip you stitched, pass your crochet hook through that stitch, yarn over and back through the stitch, give it a little slack, 3 loops on your hook, and 6 more times. Yarn over through all the loops on your hook and chain 1. And that is what you're going to do all around your bag. Let's go back to the bag. So you chain 3, you're going to skip 2 stitches and make a double crochet in the third one. And then chain 1. And then you're going to go back to the first stitch you had skipped, and you're going to make a puff stitch in that stitch. I ended up eventually going 7 times into that stitch to create my puff stitch, but depending on the yarn of your choice and how big you want your puffs, you can do 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. Yeah, I did 7 times. And then I chained 1. I skipped the 2 next stitches, and in the third one I made a double crochet. Chain 1, go back to the first stitch you had skipped, right here, and make a puff stitch in it. Again, my puff stitch consists in 7 time pulling my crochet hook through the loop, yarn over, give it some slack, just as I shown you in the puff stitch little tutorial. Yarn through all the loops, chain 1, skip 2 stitches, double crochet in the third, 1, 2, 3, and chain 1, go back to the first stitch I skipped and make my puff stitch. And this is what you're going to do all around that. Really, that's our third round of our work. The first one was just attaching your yarn with single crochets to your bottom. Second round was just single crochet all around with a little bit of a bigger crochet hook. And now your third round is the first round, the base of your braid puff stitch pattern. And I will meet you at the end of your third round. So I was actually lying when I said it's going to be round, because we're going to turn back and forth, back and forth. Those are actually going to be rows. Even though it looks like we're working in the round, we're going to turn around at the end of each round of our work. So we are at the end of our third round right there. This is what your work looks like. I love this yarn so much. I cannot tell you enough good things about it. Anyway, so you have all your puffs, you are at the end. So the last one, you still have 2 stitches left that you're going to skip. You're going to slip stitch at the top of the first chain 3 you had made at the beginning of your row, right there, slip stitch. And then you're going to go back to the first skip you had, your first stitch you had skipped, and make your last puff of your round in there. Just like that, you're finishing round 3. The hardest part is behind you guys. From now on, it's super easy, it's a breeze, and it's so much fun. So chain 1, slip stitch at the top of the first puff you had made. You're going to chain 3 and you're going to turn your work around. Important to turn your work around, or else you're just going to have puff stitch, which is fine too, but we want that braided effect. So you have a chain 3, that's going to be right at the bottom of chain 3, you're going to be your first space. You're going to make a double crochet chain 1 in that second space in between the 2 puff stitches from round 3, from row 3. Make a double crochet, a chain 1. And then go back to that first space at the bottom of your chain 3 and make your puff stitch right in there. First puff stitch from row 4, done. Always end up your puff stitch with a chain 1. Skip the space where you had the double crochet chain 1, go to the next space in between the 2 puffs, right there, and make a double crochet chain 1. Go back 1 space behind the one that you skipped, the first space that you skipped, and make your puff stitch in it. And that is all what there is to it for that 4th row. So now it's really easy. It's obvious where you put your puff stitch. Chain 1, skip 2 spaces, and in the second space make a double crochet and a chain 1. Then go back to the first space you had skipped and make your puff stitch. And you will continue like that all along that 4th row, and I will meet you at the end of your 4th row. And this is what your work will look like at about a quarter of row 4. Look how beautiful these colors are. Cannot get enough of them, but really you cannot go wrong with this yarn. They have so many really nice different colors. Some are more vibrant, some are more neutral. Love it, absolutely love it. All right, so we're continuing like that, and you see how because you turned at the end of your row, it is giving you that braided effect. That is what you want. I will meet you at the end of row 4. Here you go, and I'll show you how to end. So you have the space where you had made your double crochet chain 1, and again at the top of the next chain 3, the first chain 3 we had made at the beginning of row 4, you slip stitch, and then in that space where you had made your double crochet, you're making your last little puff stitch. I have construction work right next door, my neighbor, so I'm sorry if you hear background noises. And then to end your row, you're going to slip stitch on top of the first puff you had made at the beginning of your row 4. Chain 3, and super important, turn your work around. And so you're going to go right to the next space in between the 2 puffs from row 4, and you're going to make right there your double crochet. So usually we skip 2 spaces, then we make your double crochet chain 1 at the beginning of your 5th row, and at the beginning of each and every row you only skip 1 space. You do your double crochet chain 1, and you come back at the base of the chain 3 and make your first puff. That will be the same for each and every row of your bag. So we are at row 5. You created your first puff, chain 1, skip 2 spaces. In the second one, make your double crochet chain 1, and then go back to the space you skipped and make your puff stitch. And this is what you're going to do, more of the same for this 5th round, and I will meet you at the end of your 5th round. Here we are at the 8th row, and you do exactly the same. So you do 1 row of puff stitch, and then you slip stitch with the first puff stitch you had made from the previous row. You turn around, you chain 3, more and more of the same for as many rows as you wish. For the body of my bag, I needed 22 rows in total, so back and forth every row. Remember to turn, super important. And then this is the result you will get. It's so pretty. I love it so much. So you begin each row the same way, you also end each row the same way. You skip the space where you had done your double crochet chain 1. You go to the chain 3 that you had made at the beginning of your row, slip stitch in it, then you go back to the skip stitch and you make your puff stitch. And then you slip stitch on top of the first puff stitch you had made in that row you're working on. Here you go, so chain 3, turn your work around and begin a row as usually. Remember, the chain 3 counts as the first, underneath the chain 3 counts as your first space. In the next one, a double crochet chain 1, go back underneath the chain 3 space, make your puff stitch, and then you begin your pattern as usually. Skipping the stitch where you had made the double crochet chain 1 and going to the next space and making a double crochet chain 1. going back to the space you skipped and making your puff. And you continue like that for rows and rows, and I will meet you at the end of row 22. So once I had 22 rows, now was time to create the flap. And to create the flaps, you will need 2 stitch markers, and you will place them on both sides of your work. I had 18 puffs in between my stitch markers in the front, and I had 20 puffs in the back, so the back will be a little wider than the front. So you can clearly see the seam here in the back, and that's because I had begun in the middle of my leather bottom, but you did that hopefully on the side, so you won't have that seam in the middle of the back of your backpack of your crossbody bag. So at the end of your row 22, you fasten off. I just make a little knot so it doesn't unravel. And then you're going to fold your bag in front of you, just like so. You're going to put a stitch marker on each side of your bag. But I would like you to find both of the sides and to have 18 puff stitches in between your stitch markers in the front and 20 stitch markers in the back. So your front is going to be slightly narrower than your back. Okay, so we're going to work on your back. The flap will be part of your back and the front is narrower, so the part that you have in between your stitch markers where you have 20 puffs, you're going to join with your work facing you, the back of your work facing you. You're going to chain 3 right where we had put the stitch marker. At the beginning of your row, you do not skip 2 spaces, you go into the next space, make your double crochet chain 1 and go back where you have joined and make your chain 3 and make a puff inside that space. That is how you begin that 23rd row, which will be a shorter row and will be your back and your flap. And then you continue your row regularly until you reach the next stitch marker, because you're working in between those 2 stitch markers. So I will meet you at the end of this short row when you meet your second stitch marker, and I'll show you what to do. So here we are at the end of your 23rd row, which is the first short row. You're going to make your double crochet double crochet chain 1, go back in the space before to do your puff stitch, and then you're going to go back where your stitch marker is and you're going to make a double crochet. And you are done with your row 23, chain 3, turn your work around, and we are going to continue to work on that short row. Right now, you're not going to go in the first, but you're going to go, as always, when you begin those short row, in the first space after your chain 3. Make a double crochet chain 1 and then go back into your first space right at the bottom of the chain 3 from the beginning of the row and make your puff stitch. And that is how you're going to do your 24th row. And then you continue normally, and I will show you one more time how to end your row. So eventually we're going to decrease to create a rounder flap that folds over. Here you go, you are at the end of your 24th row, and again you're going to make a double crochet chain 1 in that last space, make your puff stitch in the space before. Chain 1 and make a double crochet again in the last space. And then you're going to chain 3, turn your work around, and you're going to do that until you reach the end of row 27. And so it's 5 rows back and forth of the back part of your bag. And then we're going to begin to decrease to create that rounded flat that will come on top of your bag. So I will meet you at the end of your row 27. And this is what your work will look like at the end of your row 27. So you have 5 rows, 5 short rows with 20 puff stitches each. And now we want to round it up and decrease it. And I'll show you how to decrease it, super easy. So we are at row 28. And you are going to chain 3 and turn your work around as we do usually. But this time, you remember we used to go to the next space, we're going to jump to 2 spaces like we used to do before. Chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, go back to the space before. And if you do that, you will decrease 1 puff. But we would like to decrease 1 puff at the end of your row as well, so I will show you how to do that. I'll meet you at the end of your row. Here we go, we are at the end of your row. Look how beautiful these colors are. I cannot get enough of it. Cannot get enough of it. So here you go. You are at the end. You have 2 puffs left at the end of your row. So what you're going to do is skip 2 spaces and you go to the 3rd one and make your double crochet, chain 1. And then you come back into the stitch where you had the double crochet and you make your puff. Chain 1, and then you're going to make a double crochet. Again in the same stitch you had made the double crochet. And you're done with your row and you decrease at the beginning and at the end. Chain 3, turn your work around. And for the next row, you're going to repeat this row over and over and over again until you only have 10 puff stitches left. So you see how we decreased and create that little flap. That is what you want to do. So I will meet you at the end of your row when you have 10 puff stitches left. You take your scissors and you fasten off. I like to make a little knot to secure so it doesn't unravel. I will actually take my tapestry needle and sew in the loose tail at the back of your work. But this is what your bag looks like. That's the bottom and that's the top flap. Super nice, right? Absolutely love it. So where your stitch marker was, we are going to place the 2 rings that are going to allow us to put the handle, to strap the handle on. And this is the beautiful leather handle that I chose for my bag. I will put the link where you can purchase it. I think it was from Etsy in the info box down below. But I'm going to put a ring on one side and then on the other side, so I will be able to carry this crossbody or on my shoulder. Let me show you how to do that. Here you go, so you grab your 2 rings right there. I will put the dimension again in the info box. And we want to attach them right from the beginning of the back flap, a little bit going forward. So from the stitch marker, we're going to use the space before the puff stitch and after the puff stitch. So take the stitch marker off. All right, so let me show you how to attach your rings. Take, of course, your stitch marker off, and then place the wrong side of your work facing you and pass your crochet hook through that corner stitch right before the first puff stitch after your flap. So you pass your crochet hook through that stitch to that space through your ring, and then you pass the slip knot with the yarn that you're joining, and then through the ring, through the stitch, you pass the slip knot and you chain. That is your first anchor to your ring. Then in that same spot, pass your crochet hook, yarn over and back through the ring and through the stitch. We have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over through both of the loops. You can keep your end yarn on the side. And now what we are going to do is more of those single crochets through the stitch and through the ring. So 1 more in that same space. Single crochet through the stitch and through the ring. And then I'm going to do 2 single crochets or 3 on top of the puff stitch. The more stitches you'll have there, the more anchored your ring will be and sturdy. But of course you don't want to make too many. So I'm going to have 8 or 9 stitches in between the space before the puff stitch, on top of the puff stitch, and then in the space right after the puff stitch. So make about 7, 8 or 9 single crochets, depending on, of course, the size, the thickness of your yarn, the yarn that you're using. But for me, I made about 9 single crochet to anchor that ring. And then once I had my 9 single crochets, I fastened off and just secured it with a knot, and then eventually I will sew in the loose tail in the back of my work, and that should be really sturdy to attach your handle to that ring. And you will do exactly the same on the opposite side of your bag. And you take your tapestry needle and you sew in all the loose pieces. So you're going to have 1 ring on one side and then a ring on the other side. So here is how it attaches to it. See, one side and then the other side. Such a cute bag, such a cute bag. You could add a closure if you want. You could make a closure and with a button. I just like it like that. I don't need a closure. The flap is big enough so it really covers the bag and closes it. That's enough for me. So the rest, the only thing that is left to do is just to take your tapestry needle, sew in all the loose tail at the back of your work, and you are done, my friends. I hope you have enjoyed creating this beautiful kind of crossbody backpack style purse. I have tremendously enjoyed creating this for you. I'm looking forward to creating many more things. As I said, feel free to line your bag or put something inside so all the little things that you can carry with you will not go through the holes. And voila! So I will see you next time. Take care. Don't forget the written pattern will be on my blog. And in the meantime, happy crochet. See you next time. Bye! Wow, I'm talking about a yarn with us. Oh my gosh, I have something in my eye now. Oh my god, I know. Leather. And I cannot scratchy, itchy, scratchy. Merde. A little bit of a twist.